Would love to say good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending upon the time in which you're watching our broadcast. I'm John. This is my wife, Felicia Edmerson, and we're with the Figueroa Church of Christ in the bustling metropolis of Los Angeles, California, home of the I won't go there. I won't go
Clippers.
there. But we're just so glad to be with you. If you've been with us over the series of podcasts, then you'll know that we're at the tail end, and we have tackled a number of topics and subjects that we believe are important to today's family. As we were winding things down, we wanted to look at the subject of remarriage and blending family and some of the issues that are involved around that. And we searched high and we searched low, and we kept coming back to our dear friends, the Andersons.
And that's because we spent time with you all too.
Yes.
I thoroughly enjoyed that time.
That was so refreshing. It was good. So we had a great time when we were passing through not too long ago, and it's just good to see them on today. So how are things going for the Andersons?
We are blessed. We just started our summer, and our summer has been a lot busier than what we thought it would be. But we're doing good. We are good. We're in a good space, and excited to get through the rest of the year. How about you?
Yeah, I concur. It's been a busy year, end of the school year. So all the kids are home and they're eating everything that they can possibly get their hands onto. So, it's the summer woes, but we're blessed.
That's wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. How many kids are at the house?
5.
5.
Ooh.
And if you count our 2 golden doodles, then you'll say 7.
Right.
7. Wow.
Oh, okay, so you need another dog.
Oh, we have 2. We don't need any more puppies.
Thank you. She doesn't want you all to have an odd number.
Oh yeah.
No, we have 2 dogs.
You know how people have oops babies. We have oops dogs. So we thought of one, and we ended up with 2. So it's
Oh my goodness.
it's been
Oh my
interesting.
goodness.
It's been interesting. They're a joy though.
Good. Well, we know that God has gifted you both in so many ways, and we thought about how best to start our discussion today. I've had the privilege of hearing Tim a number of times preach about the subject of grace, and I thought that might be a good place to start in terms of imagining grace in this context. We can be very difficult at times in terms of understanding our walk, our faith, that of those that we love, those that we're trying to love. So as you're thinking about your journey, how do you think grace kind of fit in to your whole family experience? And maybe you want to share a little bit.
Yeah. So grace is an interesting subject for me, and it is just as much a part of a journey as natural living has been for me. When I growing up, I grew up in a quite conservative context. Being preached, I was not receptive to the subject until much later on in my development as a teenager. But even then, when I recall hearing the subject, it was mentioned, but not given great emphasis. We knew that it existed, but we didn't necessarily know how it worked. So, it's like having a Ferrari, but not knowing how to drive it out of the driveway. You appreciate it and you value it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you know how to operate within it. And so it was just something that I began to notice more, even in my personal study. It became more of a priority to try to really understand this. But it really wasn't until I was a full-time minister preaching every Sunday that the subject really kind of hit me, because I'm ministering to people that are going through a number of things. And I had no idea at that time in my life that my life was quite sanitized, if you will. It was, I just hadn't had a number of difficult experiences and challenges in my life. And so it was hard to relate to people who were going through grave difficulty, but I knew the subject of grace could be a help. And so I had to sort of reorient my whole understanding of God's grace. I had to kind of, throw out everything that I thought I knew and become a brand new student of the subject. And when I did it, I was excited and ashamed at the same time. I was excited that I finally could grasp the understanding and the theology and the ideology of grace, while at the same time ashamed that here I was, 32, 33 years old, for the first time really accepting how profound this subject was in the lives of people. But it wasn't until my life changed that the subject really became more than a topic of discussion and a thing to be experienced. And so grace is my favorite thing to preach about. And I hope my life and my teaching has reflected that, and hope it's made an impact in people's lives.
Would you say that grace was helpful in how you viewed your life, your decisions, the decisions of others? Did your thinking, was there like a reconstruct of how you looked at everything, and that's kind of what drove some of your thinking about kind of where you are and where and where we're headed? Because it's got to be a challenging thing to have to look at making some of the decisions that we have to make. And I know from personal experience that you can sometimes be your worst critic, and you can really, really, really be hard on yourself. So did you find grace helping you in that space with yourself, or kind of talk about that a little?
Yeah, at first it was difficult, because when grace is taught and understood incorrectly, it sounds like permissiveness. It can give one the belief that you have license to do whatever you want to do, and God will just pick you up and everything will be just fine. And I think because of my background in terms of the conservative way I grew up, and that reality of permissiveness, it became difficult to ingest it in my own life. There was the point where I understood it, and then there was the point where I needed it to affect me, if that makes sense. And where I settled on this was that I began to look at grace like a lens, literally like the glasses that I'm wearing. When I don't have them on, there is a perspective that I have that it is has a lot to do with how I feel and what I want. And when I look at the subject through the lens of, or I look at anything through the lens of grace, it literally changes the way I see everything, the way I see people, the way I see problems and challenges, the way I see and understand the world. It has changed all of that, and it's still changing. It's still a thing, for me, especially in parenting. I would say parenting right now is the area where grace has impacted me the most, because it is challenging the way that I see directing my children's lives, our children's lives, for that matter. And I think that has been transformative for me and for all of us. And so, yeah, it has been a guiding principle for most, if not everything, I've had to do and go through over the last 6 or 7 years.
Would you say that when you came to the decision that I'm going to go a different direction with my marriage, and I'm going to look to separate and then to remarry, how did you come to that decision? with our background, and we both share the same background, we're very conservative, but I've always appreciated your humility and your tenderness, with just how you talk about things. So, and I'm really, interested in Mia, and kind of in Jamia, and how she, experienced this aspect of it as well. So, can you talk a little bit about that? Coming to that conclusion that, hey,
this was a necessary ending.
Mm-hmm. There's a passage in Philippians chapter 4, a few passages that for me began a trajectory of I call it peaceful thinking, where Paul says, he says that I've learned in whatever state I'm in to be content. Now he says that before he says I can do all things through Christ who gives me the strength. He also says later on, in the peace of God, right, which is able, right, to give you all understanding. He talks about the peace that we can get, that we can have, regardless of the fact that we don't necessarily have understanding. What that sort of brought me to is that there are things that I don't understand. There are things that I'll never understand. How things happen, how things occur, decisions that are made. And I think for a person like me, who could be analytical at times, very specific, and sometimes overthink. That's one of my wife would say that's one of my issues, is that when you're in a space like that, you think you have to have everything figured out.
right.
You think that you have to have, everything becomes like an equation,
Right.
yeah, if this and that, then this,
Right.
And what I've learned with God is that in life, it doesn't always work like that. God does not always give you insight to everything that happens in life,
Right.
but he can give you the capacity to have peace.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as my decision to move away and transition from one life to another had a lot more to do with resting in God's grace, realizing that I don't have to have everything figured out, and that God will meet me where I'm at, and he will mend what needs to be mended. He will, dry my tears. He will put the broken pieces together. And he already has this part of my life figured out. I think a lot of times, especially when you function in the capacity that I have at times as a minister, is that you struggle with your thoughts versus the thoughts of the people that you serve. And not only the people that you serve, but just anybody outside of your marital context. I realize that there are, in anybody's marriage from the outside looking in, there are a number of opinions and thoughts and perceptions that people have. And I think when you're in a position of leadership, we sometimes don't know how much we care about how other people think. It's cliche to say, well, I don't care how people think, I do what I do. And we say that. But I have found that a number of us who give that posture, we do it from a defensive standpoint, really are pained by the perceptions that people have. And there's a struggle at times trying to discern where your decision-making source comes from. Am I making these decisions because of what they'll think, because of what they'll say? And every person who experiences a divorce is going to struggle with that from time to time. You're going to struggle with the perception.
Yeah.
I know for me, it was like the death of a dream, the death of you don't get married to get divorced. And so when you get married, you have a certain view of what your trajectory is going to be. You're going to do this and buy this house and move to this place and raise these kids. And when you have a divorce, it is the death of some of those dreams. And that's hard to accept, while at the same time, you're trying to make decisions that you think will be politically safe, if
Mm.
you will. And, you know, it would never be appropriate to stand on a stage and give some verbal dissertation as to why I'm making this decision and all of the nuances, connected to that. At the end of the day, I rested on the fact that God knows, I know, and I don't have to have all this figured out. I understand where my freedom and my liberty is, but I also understand the challenges associated with making the decision that I believe is best for me and my relationship with God and my children. And that is a very nuanced type of a thing, which is why I think most people who are around folks going through divorce really need to have a heart of empathy and support, because there are a number of things, especially if you haven't been through before, that you really can't quantify. And the best thing you can do is just be there and give support.
Mhm. When Jesus was in the Garden of Gethsemane, he was kneeling and looking at a death that he was going to have to endure. And I often think about the reluctance and the challenge and the fear that comes along with experiencing death. So, how you just phrased it is really interesting to me because it is a death of sorts. But the great thing about the resurrection narrative is there's a resurrection,
Right.
and there is the next chapter,
Right.
in this story, in this saga. And one of the things that I've tried to over the years is I've tried to be at a place in my life and in my ministry where we can be open and accepting of death and new beginnings. And that's not always an easy task, especially when you're the minister or a prominent person in the church. It just really makes for um, difficulty and discomfort. But I applaud, I think, the bravery that I sense in the decision that had to be made, and even now the responsibility that you have to help others who may be in a similar space. You and I talked about via text over the last couple of days that how little we have available to people in our fellowship that are dealing with divorce and remarriage and blended family and just all of the things that accompany that. So before we kind of move into the blending family piece, Jamie, is there anything that you think you want to add? We don't want this to we don't want you to not feel a part of it. So please, feel free to add some perspective as we think about this thing holistically. That's why we just didn't want Tim. We wanted both of you all because we know you all both have something to share. So feel free.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with majority of what Tim said. I think my only difference is I don't necessarily look at it as death per se. I
Okay.
look at it, you know how a movie comes out and then the sequel comes out and they have different characters?
Mhm.
Right? The work still has to get done. Life still has to be lived, but there's a different character in place. And I look at it like that. I think combined as we blended, there were goals that we had prior to our marriage, and we've knocked those goals down even after the divorce, even after the remarriage. We strengthened our partnership to continue to elevate. And so I would not necessarily look at it as a death as much as a recasting. And I know that's not a popular way to say it, but that's what it is. It's pivoting, it's moving, right? You got hit with something in life that shattered you, but we still had children who we have to model right, these behaviors for it, that no matter what life throws at you, you have the power to overcome.
And let me get some clarity there. Because I agree with your point. I would say it's a death of a dream, not the dream. I think that's a difference.
Okay.
So I mean the death of a dream. When you begin a marriage, you see a trajectory, and there's a point where if you go through what we've gone through individually, then you realize that dream has died, right? But the dream is still very much alive. In terms
So
of
you're
things-
still dreaming.
Oh yeah, dreaming and manifesting. Definitely.
And what are you doing to ensure that you don't have to do another recasting in roles?
So you take what you learn. So even good, bad, and indifferent, no matter what you experience in life, there are teachable moments in those things. So if I were to look back at my previous marriage, Jamia is not perfect, right? So I make bad decisions, I make mistakes, I'm constantly growing and evolving. And so I look back at certain scenarios and go, I can be a more effective communicator. Right.
Okay.
So in this marriage, I am all in making sure that I'm an effective communicator. So if we have to talk about this for 10 hours, right? We're not going to walk away from it until I've received what you have to say. We don't have to walk away agreeing, right? Because we're not robots, but we do at least want to hear each other out and listen to each other's vantage point. So you take those things that you could have done better, wish you would have done better, or as you grow and evolve and your thinking changes, you bring that into the new relationship.
And it's not patchwork. It's not adding new features,
right?
As much as it is being unbelievably and extraordinarily transparent, so that you can go back to your foundation and determine what needs to be reconfigured. There are things that we have committed to because we don't plan, desire, nor look forward to anything that resembles divorce again, that we have just put in place as non-negotiables, you know, but that requires a certain level of transparency that we recognize is completely necessary in order for us to be healthy going forward. There is a certain level of discomfort that can come with that. But when you've gone through some of the things that we've gone through, whether, you know, things have happened to us or whether we have made poor decisions or whatever the case may be, as my father in the gospel, Stanley Hubbard, has often said, he says that wise people learn from the mistakes of others. Smart people learn from their own mistakes, and dummies never learn. We don't want to be dumb. We want to be better than smart. We want to be wise. So we've learned a number of things from our own experiences previously, but we want to be wise enough to say, hey, you know, we don't have to necessarily go through this thing in order to be wise enough to get through it, right? And so it necessitates not just saying, hey, we're going to do better, but we're going to try to find every morsel of wisdom we can from anywhere, so that we can, we can bring it into our own lives and do better.
Be intentional.
All right. So, Brother and Sister Anderson, do you find now that you're better able to, like when you do premarital counseling, you're better able to say or see if a couple should come together or should not?
Yes.
Experience is the best teacher.
It's an ugly and painful teacher, but indeed. I think that our experiences, first of all, I think going through what we've gone through gives us almost an inherited radar where we can see when people are going through stuff. We've both been at a place where you're going through a divorce, you don't have an appetite, you struggle to think clearly.
Things that you used to enjoy, if someone were to call you and say, hey, let's go see this movie, and you're, there's something.
Or your circle, the circle itself.
Yeah.
When you're going through relationship trauma like this, changes, because let it not be misunderstood. Divorce is traumatic.
Yeah.
It's traumatic for everybody, for the two individuals involved, for their children, in-laws. It is a traumatic experience, and it has to be treated like that. And it has to be respected like that. And so knowing that, we can see the trauma on other people who have a pending divorce, or just struggling, or they've gone through with it already. And it gives us the ability to kind of hone in on who they are beyond what they're going through, and try to deposit some things that are going to be very helpful in their lives.
Yeah. What do you wish the church's leadership and the church would have done for you as you experienced the separation, the divorce? Was there something that would have been particularly helpful that maybe if they would have done, and then you fill in the blank, or maybe if your brothers and sisters in Christ, could have done it, and then you fill in the blank?
I think that shepherding, right? So a person going through a divorce is no different than a person whose mother is dying, a person whose child is in the hospital or in prison, right? You still, even if I can't muddle out 3 words because I'm an emotional wreck, a text message, hey sis, just praying for you. Not intruding, not asking me what happened, who, what, when, where, why. No, just you're in my thoughts and prayers. I think that goes a long way, but we sometimes have a very misguided view on divorce. And we feel like we need to know the details in order to figure out, well, which one of them am I going to support and pray for?
Okay.
No, we're all just human beings. We're all just Christians trying to be Christ-like. And so I think that it is the church's responsibility to shepherd. It is the married women responsibility to reach out. It is the older women in the church responsibility to say, hey, listen, I'm praying for you and I love you.
Okay.
That's it. Nothing else. And if a person feels like, you know what, I appreciate that, and I feel so comfortable with you that I want to share with you my story, that's something different. But just knowing that you're in that person's corner, their children still need prayer. Their children still need they want to be still treated like regular children, not the children whose parents are going through divorce. And so we try to put labels on everyone and put everyone in a box, but instead do what God called you to do. Love the neighbor, be there, consider them like you would want someone to consider you.
That's good. And I would add to that, the church leaders and members included, need to do a much better job at seeing the human in the crisis.
Okay.
I don't know what it is about our stigmas about divorced families that make people feel as though you become less human when you're going through this experience. When you're going through the divorce, you're having a hard time getting out of the bed. You are having a hard time trying to attach yourself to what is real. You are going to have the hardest time in that haze making sound decisions. And furthermore, this insistence that she mentioned on the why and the what and the how and the who, I find in church that becomes more important to people than the person.
Okay.
And in my experience, I think I can recall on maybe 3 occasions in about a year and a half of going through stuff like, how are you? What can I do?
Okay.
I think I maybe had 1, maybe 2 individuals like, I just want to help any way I can. If you just want me to sit with you, I think about, I think Mark 1, when the Bible says that Jesus was, he had just healed Peter's mother-in-law. And then the Bible says he was getting ready to turn down that night, and there were sick people, demon-possessed people. One of the other synoptic gospels said the whole city had come out. And the Bible says that Jesus healed. I think Mark says he healed many. I think maybe Matthew says all. Nonetheless, he's healing all night long. The Bible says that before the sun rose, he left and went to a solitary place to pray. Now, understand this. People going through a divorce oftentimes want to be left alone because they know that there's an insistence on who, what, when, where, how, and why, right?
Yes.
And sometimes people view that isolation as they don't care, they don't want me around. It's
or
not
guilt.
that, right? Yeah, he
They must have done something wrong because you don't want to talk about it.
When really is, I'm trying to think without hurting myself. I'm trying to figure out, like, not the next month and the next day. I'm trying to figure out now, right? Well, the Bible says that when the disciples got up, they looked around and Jesus wasn't there. And so they went looking for him. And when they finally found him, get this, they didn't say, you need something to eat? You know, you tired? Would you like us to bring you a drink? You want us to just sit with you? Do you want to talk? You know, do you want to be left alone? The very first words the Bible records that came out of their mouth was, everybody is looking for you. And it shows that in moments of crises or difficulty, the response of the church is often what they can get out of you more than what they can pour into you. And Jesus' response is classic. He basically says, we got to go to the next town because this is what I was brought here to do. And his mindset was, I've got to stay focused because I recognize that if I invest too much in these people, they'll think more about what they can get out of me versus the bigger picture of building the kingdom. And then you'll get lost. And I think I got lost in that for several months, just trying to discern what I'm to give and what I need. So I think, to answer your question, what church leaders can do is to see the human. You see the human being. The human being is going through probably the worst crises in their entire life, and being judgmental, being overly policing instead of trying to relate to the person is very dangerous. And I think the church can do a lot better job at just trying to see the human that's going through the crisis.
Okay. All right. In the hospital, Felicia and I both work in healthcare, and I do a lot of work in the ER. And so I'm sitting in my office. I'll get a phone call from the switchboard that says, Chaplain, we have a tier 1 ETA 3 minutes. I'm about 4 minutes away from the ER. Tier 1 is life-threatening. It's literally people who've come in, they've been stabbed, they've been shot, they've been in a horrific car accident. And literally when they hit that trauma bay, the expertise and skill of the men and women present is what's standing between them and death. And I think far too often we've left the wrong people in the trauma bay to take care of people who've been injured in terms of their personal lives and their marriages and their relationships. And I want to encourage us who are working as church leaders, and I'm including men and women in that. Women play an important role in the church, to let's heighten our skill. So when we see a spiritual trauma tier 1 and a couple that may not be together are in our spiritual trauma bay, that we know what to say, we know what to do, we know how to carry ourselves, because and I've seen it. I have seen people come in with very similar wounds. Some of them make it and some of them don't. And I would probably say the same about some of our members, in that we just have to do a better job at spending time with learning, growing our understanding. So when we have people in our lives that we love who are experiencing something that may be unparalleled, that we can position ourselves, just like you've said, to be available and to help walk the road, to help walk the path with them. And like Jamia said, you know, you may or you may not be invited to sit at the table, but that's not what this is about. You know, it's about us figuring out a way that we can help one another make it through today, because we know tomorrow is on the way. It takes a lot of expertise to do what you're doing. Talk to us about the kids, and you know, how did you handle the transition with the kids? Is that something that's an ongoing process, or did you kind of sit down and map it out and you guys are following, you know, your 3 or 4 point plan? So talk to us about the kids and the transitional work with your larger family.
Well, if anyone has children, they know your 3 or 4 point plan. You might as well ball it up and put it in the trash, because it doesn't work the way you see it in your mind. For us, the benefit that we had was our children were familiar with each other. And so that helped. That did not alleviate the actual blending process, but it did aid in it. And so I think our biggest thing was, or our biggest thing even now with blending, is our nucleus. So we have nucleus trips, right? So there are trips where he and one of the girls will go on a trip, or maybe him and 2 of the girls, or him and just the girls will go on the trip. And there are nucleus trips where me, Anna, and Ian will just go on a trip. And then there are blended family trips where all of us go on a trip. And so we try to let our children know that they still have us as individuals, right? I'm still mom. He's still dad. You have us as individuals, but then you have this bonus person. So the girls call me Matu, and my children called him Detu. And so you know that you have this extra hand, this extra supportive person to be there, not to replace their other parents. They have other parents who are active in their lives, but and they have someone else who's there who can be an aid when you need to. I explained it to the girls like their mom is Batman and I'm Robin, right? So if Batman is tied up with something else, if Batman can't get to the crisis, he sends Robin. And so there will be instances where maybe Tim is out of town preaching and their mom is busy, but Matu is in the crowd. I'm there, I'm supporting, I'm cheering, I'm there. And so we try our best to see our children as individuals first, and then what blending is.
Yeah, I would add to that. Yeah, the playbook thing, man. I wish that we definitely had some missteps in the genesis of trying to connect our children together in terms of our marital decision. We would definitely go back and reconfigure that. There were so many circumstances around that made it hazy for us. But I appreciate God's grace, because we, even through that experience, found a place of balance where we are doing what works for us. You know, our children weren't babies when we blended. So they were, a few of them were nearly teenagers, the others preteens. And so their consciousness was more enlightened in terms of their awareness of what was happening, going on. But they had lived for a number of years with their own traditions, their own, the systems, if you will. And so when you blend, there's a difficulty there, because there is a thought that, well, will our traditions come to an end? What are our habits? How might they change? And so in one sense, you're trying to create something new, but in another sense, you're trying to preserve some things that were connected to the psyche of your children. And that is very difficult to figure out. We spent the first...
Thankful to COVID, I don't mean to interrupt. COVID aided
as
us.
bad as it was, as
Yes.
bad as COVID was for
As
the
bad
world.
as it was for the world, it gave us an opportunity. I mean, we were fortified in. We didn't have a choice, because one of the things that we said early on was him and I have all the chemistry in the world, right? I can finish his sentence. He can anticipate a need that I have before I even fully register that it's a need.
Praise be
Great.
to God, the God of heaven, of grace and mercy. Go ahead.
All right now. But right, your kids don't have that chemistry, right? And so giving them that space and that time to create their own chemistry, and understanding that this is not going to be a cookie cutter. So this is not going to be all right, we're blending. This is your sister now. This is your brother, and you will love each other, and this is how it will work. No.
Right. When you see each other in school, say, that's my sister, you know.
Yeah. The first year of them at the same school, because they were already at the same school, I would drop the two oldest off at school, and they would go in different interests.
And they have completely different set of friends.
Everything is completely different.
Personalities. Their rituals and habits are different. And I think, you know, me being the way I think, I felt like I needed to sort of manufacture that. Whereas Nia was more
I'm a
like,
lot more into the organic. Because
right now, let's just jump and let's see, you know, and both of those characteristics can be very helpful in certain contexts. But blending those two thoughts together, those two ways of thinking, have been helpful, because we've yielded in areas where, you know, like I think we need to plan this family vacation this way and do this and go here, whatever. She's just like, look, hey,
let's just see what they're gonna do, because at the end of the day, if all of our kids have strong personalities. I would probably say my eldest is a little bit more like me. So she's
heavy on the little more like what?
Yeah, she's very vocal. Whereas London is a lot like her dad, which is
strategic, careful.
Yeah. And
patient.
So we had to give them the space to do what we had to do, which was fill each other out, you know, and give them the space to have their own conversations and see what it would look like. Because if we forced it, when they get out, they still have that close connection.
Right.
Probably the best example, real quick, for you all's audience is the rooming situation.
Oh, that was an absolute complete disaster. God is so good to us. So he afforded us the opportunity to be able to have a home where the kids could have chosen if they wanted their own room, or if we were going to do a media room. And so originally, both of the oldest girls were like, yeah, we'll do a media room. We'll share rooms. Now, I knew that this was going to be bad from the moment that he gave the option. I knew it would be bad. Anna is the eldest, and she's my only girl.
Okay.
I married a man with 3 daughters.
Got it.
They're girls. So we know what girls do. And so Anna, she likes it hot, and I like it cold. And I like sleeping with a nightlight, and she likes sleeping with a pitch dark. And Mom, I cannot do this. I'm going crazy.
Now keep in mind, they said they wanted to
right.
And we were like, well, this is perfect. They're the same grade. They're nearly the same age. Just work out great.
But they're oil and water.
They are.
Anna is social butterfly, cheer. She's into boys now, right? Those are HBCU life. London is
very conservative, London's
she
in
is
Washington,
a minimalist
DC right now, and loving lectures on brain development and
Anna's at
all
cheer
this
camp.
kind of stuff, right? And so they are very different. And so you know, I guess we'll get into that in a minute. But you have to understand you have to do the best you can at trying to understand what your children need
and understand the non-negotiables for them. So for instance, it's a non-negotiable. We will support one another. That is a non-negotiable. So when Sarai had robotics club Saturday morning at 7:00 in the morning, everybody was going to robotics. We will support one another. Ian had wrestling. Wrestling was very difficult for his mother to watch. I was able to get through it, but the family went and supported. So that's a non-negotiable. But whether or not you want to go to the movies with your friends, do you have to invite your little sister or your big sister? No.
Right.
No. So they can still maintain their individuality and still be a part of this family. And so that we did not want them to lose their individuality, because it's just like at a wedding. When you're at a wedding and you light the unity candle, typically, right, each one of you light a candle and then you blow the middle candle out. That's what people were doing. But why?
The side candles.
The side candles out. You take the side candles, you light the middle candle and then you blow the side candles out. Why?
And this is
Because you're coming together as one.
Right. But you're still individuals.
Right.
So my husband loves documentaries. That is his thing. We don't do that together because I don't watch.
Her. She doesn't like.
I don't watch documentaries. That's not my thing, right? I love to shop. My husband is not going shopping.
Oh no, Jamie! I had so much respect for you.
I know, right? So, but then there are other things that we absolutely love doing together.
Right.
But we still have these real parts of us that are individuals who came together after 30 years old and were like, no, I still really like this, but we can still blend together. And so we gave the kids and we give the kids that autonomy, that option. So when London and Anna ended up splitting rooms, we allowed them to split rooms. London took back over the original room she would have. Anna stayed in the room. Do you know that London would take her blanket and her pillow in there and sleep on Anna's futon? But when we forced them to share a room, it was chaotic.
Right.
It was walking on eggshells. It was all of that.
And we had to learn that. We had to figure it out. And I think when our children went to counseling, because we wanted them to have another avenue to be able to have their voice heard. Both of us are proponents of it. We have no issue with it. And we felt that it would be healthy for them. And it was, because they were able to communicate, hey, I thought I wanted a room with my new sister, but I don't really want to. How do I say that? And the therapist was able to say, hey, this is not an arrangement that, they feel will help them, in this transition. And we made that change and they were good.
And they actually became closer. And so I think the overall theme is it has to happen organically. It has to happen organically.
So looking back on the many transitions that you've come through and that you're coming through, would you recommend maybe a resource? Maybe it's a book, maybe it's an article, maybe it's an author that would be helpful. So if a family, if a couple is contemplating maybe separating or remarrying or blending, that we can champion at least a resource or two that may be helpful.
I would definitely say, I think Dr. Henry Cloud, I believe his book, Boundaries, I believe that's the author of that book. Boundaries, probably the most important unsaid topic in the whole thing. Why are you laughing? Because I think when you're going through this kind of change, there are varying opinions from everywhere. Everybody's got an opinion about what you need to do, what your next move should be, how long it should take. And that can be very difficult to hear those kind of voices and then try to make decisions that are best for you. Understanding boundaries is vital to making these kind of transitions, because again, a lot of times people have codependencies all over the place. They are so deep in their own heads that they don't know what they're thinking. And when you're in a conundrum like that, it's really hard to make decisions that are best for you and your family. I would say that people really need to understand boundaries because everybody's situation is not going to look the same. Our situation, our situation is different, and we accept that. But I'd be lying if I told you that it was difficult to become us, because there were a lot of things that we had to sacrifice to become us. Things that we love, people that we valued, certain spaces that we enjoyed. There were parts of that we had to unload in order to become the us that we know that we can be. And I think that had we not unloaded those things, we would not be us, because we would have determined our trajectory based upon the thoughts and the wishes and beliefs of the people around us. And that would not have led us to a place of wholeness that we feel we're in now.
I think another thing, if people are considering remarriage, especially if children are involved, the same way you do premarital counseling, do premarital family counseling. create a space. So we started doing things like trust circles. And our trust circle is where everyone stands in a circle.
That's why you laugh.
Yes. Everyone stands in a circle. What you say in that circle is not going to be used against you. You're not being put on punishment. You're respectful, yes, but you say what you feel. And that may hurt some feelings. I remember in one trust circle, Anna and Ian were like, Mom, sometimes you overreact. And as much as I wanted to go, me overreact? No, right? I had to eat it. I had to hear it. And after we left out that circle, I was intentional about the thing that my kids said in that circle. But they also had to feel comfortable enough to be able to share that with me. And one, know that there would be some change, some follow through.
Okay.
But then two, to know that I'm not going to go, 2 weeks from now, you tell me something. That's not me overreacting. Because remember, you told me I overreact. So no, we're not doing that. We're not throwing it back in each other's faces. We are hearing you, because my grandmother used to say, even in a lie, there's some truth. There's some truth. And so looking through that and going, where's some truth in that? Well, maybe in that instant I did overreact because I was being a protective mom, or whatever my rationale is. It doesn't matter because of the way that they received it. And so I would also suggest premarital counselor. And Dr. Anderson is actually interested in writing a blended book. So that may be a resource for families in the future.
Okay, well, keep us posted.
We absolutely will.
Yeah. So that author was Dr. Henry Cloud.
Yes.
Dr. Henry
Boundaries.
Cloud. Yeah. And that's Boundaries. It's available on Amazon. We're not going to get any kind of a boost for that, but I just wanted to make sure that people were aware. Again, this is John and Felicia Edmerson. We are right in the middle of our podcast with the Andersons. So we're talking about remarriage and family blending and all of the things associated with that. At the Figueroa congregation, we are about ministry, serving God's family, and then, of course, serving our biological family, and trying to create space where we both can find some success. And our hope is that you're enjoying what we've talked about on tonight. Let me ask you, when you were thinking about this, did it end up being what you thought it would be? Are you surprised, or were you surprised? Did you learn some things about yourself, that you thought you knew? I'm just curious about, what misconceptions maybe you may have had, but now that you're into it and you've been there for some time, were you spot on, or were you just totally in left field?
Is this blending or remarriage?
Yeah, which
blending
thing?
or remarriage?
Either one.
Misconceptions, I think, for me about blending. You watch TV, right? And you see the movie where the mom and dad get divorced and they get remarried. And it's like either you have the wicked stepmom, or you have the stepmom who's like really, really trying, but the kids don't want anything to do with her, right? And those are typically the only mainstream media things that we see about stepmom or bonus parents. And so I think for me, the misconception of like, okay, it's 3 girls, like 3 girls, puberty, all of that. Like I thought it would be a walk in the park. I'm not gonna lie, because I'm like, oh, girls love me. Like, yeah, y'all loved me until I married your dad and I took your dad, because those are daddy's girls. And so I think my misconception was like, oh, they're going to absolutely love me. Blending is going to be so easy because they already love me and it's just going to be more of the same. It was not. I had to gain their trust. I remember early on things like, you walk right past me and go, and I'm cooking. Dad, what are we eating for dinner? No, but I'm right here. You could just ask me, right? Like little things like that. I'm going, wait, I thought we were good. I thought we were cool.
Yeah.
And so I think one of the misconceptions was, you're going to love me and respect me because I'm an adult and I'm married to your dad. No, we got to build relationship. We have to build relationship. And again, I am a proponent of organic relationships. And so even sometimes now, if there's some really good news, depending on which daughter it is, They want to go directly to their dad, and then they'll tell me I'm B. And I'm okay with that, right? Like, you can't be offended by that. That's dad. And then there are other instances where it's things that he's like, well, when did y'all talk about that? Or when did y'all make that decision? I'm like, that's us. And so we have our clear lanes, but we also have that relationship. And they'll look at him and go, well, my two said we could do X, Y, and Z. And he's like, and I'm like, I sure did. And they love it now. Now it's like, oh, we're going to tell my two on you. Mm-hmm. We're fostering that relationship.
It's their getaway card. It's the ace in the deck.
I am the ace in the deck for them, which I love. I love because that helped foster that relationship of, if there's something going on and you don't want to talk to dad about it, you know that I'm here. You don't have to wait until the next week when you go back to your mom. If there's something you need, I'm here. And I'll always do my best to meet your needs. And then I think with marriage, I don't know. I just knew we would be great.
Yeah, that's been the least difficult part.
Yeah,
is our marriage.
Yeah. Now we've tweaked some communication. Mr. Anderson has a real smart mouth, so we
learn from the best.
so we've tweaked things like that, just understanding each other's, because as he stated, a divorce is traumatic, right? And so understanding each other's triggers. And understanding when you're being triggered or when it's me. And then being able to have that conversation, even if it hurts.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we just put some things in place early where we were like, hey, we've been through some stuff. And so it'd be naive of us to suggest that we won't be feeling certain things in different instances. And so we relieve each other of that worry by just being straight up with each other. Hey, this is how I feel. This is what's going on. This is what I think, so that you don't have to do the guesswork that can lead down a path that can become dangerous for couples. I think relationally, it is actually better than we thought it would be. We agree with that, right? Like way better. Our relationship is way better than we thought it would be.
And that doesn't mean that it's perfect. Like, we're not trying to portray, we are humans. During COVID, we were doing some podcast type stuff, and we were very transparent. We have disagreements, and there were times when we would have a disagreement, be like, okay, we're not recording today because this is the day we had a disagreement, and we need an opportunity to work through this thing. But I think that at the end of the day, we choose to work through it, no matter what it is. Right. There's a conscious choice to work through it. Like, shut down and retreat is not an option. It's not an option. Now, you have time to process. You have time to say, hey, I just need a minute because I need to wrap my mind around, insert whatever this thing is that we're discussing. But we will come back to it. We will have this conversation, and we'll both be heard.
Yeah, we've definitely gone through our own tests and difficulties and challenges in our relationship. I think each time it's made us stronger. And so by no means do I want your audience to think that we are some prototypical idealistic couple. We are not. We work at this every day to be better. But I would say, to answer your question, definitely the aspect of blending our children was far more nuanced than we ever imagined. Because our chemistry is so good, we just assumed that our children would have that chemistry with each other and with us as individual opposites of parents. But it just doesn't vibe like that. And I know that may sound common sense, but there are so many nuances to blending a family that it just would be very naive to think that they're going to click on, every single one of those levels.
And because of history. So there are, again, as you said, rituals that Anna and Ian and I had. For instance, we always took our Christmas tree down Martin Luther King weekend. Like, that was just our thing. We love Christmas, right?
And that's just absurd.
For them, it was like, okay, day after Christmas, let's take the Christmas tree down.
Let's go.
And my kids are like, take down the Christmas tree.
It's still Christmas.
No, like, because we love Christmas, like, this is our thing. Or pajamas, like Christmas Eve. And like, we had our own traditions and they had their own traditions. And we had to, create traditions as a family, but we didn't want to take more from them. So we didn't take those traditions. So we even had to come together and go, okay, would it kill y'all for us to leave the Christmas tree up until January? No, it wouldn't kill. Okay, cool. Well, would it kill y'all to do, a scary movie night? Yes, because we do not watch scary movies. we'll do a movie
And
night.
we love scary movies.
And but we don't get offended. So when the girls and Tim are upstairs in the game room watching a scary movie, me and Ian are in the room watching Chicago PD, or something that we enjoy. And so we just use that time to still keep that nucleus connection. But then last night we were at the table playing spoons and Uno as a family. So it will -2 who are away doing their own things, but we have to be intentional, but we can't force it. And there's a fine line between being intentional and forcing something to fit.
All right. Well, our hour is up and we still didn't get to tackle quite a few things, but
we got some extra time, John. You got a few more questions, we can handle it. But if you need to move on, we understand, brother.
Yeah, I try to keep it within an hour, so I'm gonna try to stick to my schedule. But we want both of you all to know how much we appreciate your making yourselves available, and our hope is that our work is going to bless and encourage many who will watch this over the years, and hopefully won't be the last time that we get a chance to talk about, because we stood and talk about so many things, from finding balance between careers and parenting, and spiritual development of the children and what that looks like today. So it's still a number of things I wanted to get to, but we just didn't have time. But thank you all so much for being available. We appreciate and we value our friendship, and our hope is that we'll get a chance to see you all soon. I don't know when you're gonna be out in California. Last time you came, fate hogged you. We didn't get a chance to do much with you, but again, we just want to tell you how much we appreciate you and thank you for your time tonight. Sweetie, you want to add anything?
Yeah, well, I've got grace does not mean permissiveness. So I've jotted down my notes. So I'm gonna do better with my husband and with the members. Okay, so thank you both.
All right, God bless. This is the Edmersons and the Andersons, and we're signing off. This is the LA Family Live podcast with the Figueroa Church of Christ in Los Angeles, 455 West 57th Street. Our minister is Vincent Hawkins. We invite you to come to Bible class at 9:30, worship at 10:30, or you certainly can join us online. Again, we want to welcome you. Have a wonderful day, and we'll talk with you later. God bless. Hold on, brother.
Appreciate it. Take care.